comes down to computers communicating.
The information superhighway can be a confusing mix of on-ramps and off-ramps.
Bitcoin is worthless artificial gold.
Is it still rat poison?
Probably rat poison squared.
We need to get into the world of, okay, this is actually foundational technology.
What the Internet of Money does is it creates a single network which can do a microtransaction to a gigatransaction.
The Internet is going to be one of the major forces for reducing the role of government. The one thing that's missing, but that will soon be developed, is a reliable eCash.
Alrighty, welcome back to Final Settlement. Today is Tuesday, April 8th, 2025. Super excited for today's rip. We've got a great episode for you guys. Two special guests today. So alongside me is my co-host Liam Nelson, and our two guests today, Pierre Corbin, founder and CEO of Flash Payments, and Graham Krizik, founder and CEO of Voltage Payments. So, lots to talk about today. The high-level theme is going to be really, what we've talked about a lot on this show historically is Bitcoin is more than just a store of value. It's more than digital gold. I think that's, the primary thesis that a lot of allocators are wrapping their heads around today. Even if you think about something like, the United States adopting Bitcoin in some sense and creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve, that's very much the store of value use case. That's how they're thinking about it. That's how most allocators are thinking about it. But the reality is that, digital gold doesn't really do Bitcoin justice. It can be much more than that. And propelling forward that sort of next leg of the thesis, if you will, is things like the Lightning Network, other protocols that are interoperable with Bitcoin's base layer that are going to enable all these different payments use cases, micropayments, things that Pierre and Flash are doing with Nostr Wallet Connect are fascinating. And Graham and his team also just put out a report with Fidelity around the Lightning Network, so we'll get into that as well, and some announcements from the Voltage team in addition to that. So very excited to have you both on the show today. How are we doing, fellas?
Doing great. Yeah, excited to be here. I think that I love the topic because this is something that we talk quite a bit about, of just if Bitcoin's only a store of value, then we kind of lost some of the point. So yeah, excited to dive in. Yeah,
that's it was actually, I think there was a clip or a quote from Jack Dorsey going around the past week or so that said something to the effect of that, like, if it's just a store of value, Bitcoin has failed. Would you guys agree? Let's just maybe start there. Would you guys agree with that sentiment from Jack a week or so ago?
I think generally speaking, I guess not. I mean, store of value is still people using it, right? I think it will mean, Bitcoin's full potential won't have been reached, I think. But yeah, I think, there's still, first, just as hedge against his faith and store of value number go up, I think there's already a lot of value in Bitcoin just with that. But yeah, 100%. I mean, that's what we're working on at Flash as well. It's, Bitcoin, before being peer-to-peer, before being store of value, I mean, the title of the white paper is that it's, peer-to-peer electronic cash, right? So that's, it's supposed to be the first use case before store of value. Store of value is just a result of all of the fundamental mechanisms that were built into Bitcoin. So, yeah, but I don't think it would have failed, right? People would still use it, even if it's just to stay there.
Graham, do you agree with that, or different
Yeah,
take?
I mean, yes, I think that ultimately, if Bitcoin is only a store of value, as it failed, I think failed is a strong word there. Yeah. I do think that it has not reached its full potential that it could. And I completely agree on, Satoshi's, I think, original vision for it is for a payments mechanism. I mean, he put that in the paper of here's how you can, send these electronic, digital cash payments. So I think there is a huge amount of potential inside of Bitcoin for the payments use case. I think that's been one of the challenges that we've seen at the start of this year is, everyone's excited or was excited about all the things going on in the federal government in the United States of like the whole like the Bitcoin bill and like the crypto stockpile, like all of those things that were kind of happening at the administration level. The thing is, all of those things were for a store of value use case. They're all talking about the government's going to hold this, like all of those things. I'm not saying that those are all bad things necessarily. We can debate all of those different things independently, but like overall, I think the focus has been on the store of value for so long that people have really lost sight of the payments side of it. And so that's what I think, both of our companies are really trying to bring up, is just more of, it is not only can Bitcoin do payments, and it can do payments well, but it is actually the most superior way of doing payments in the entire crypto ecosystem. That's what we kind of highlight in our report with Fidelity, is it's not only like, oh, Bitcoin can also do this thing too. It's like, no, it can actually do it, and it can do it much better than other systems that have been created to try and solve that problem too. So I think that it doesn't fail if it's only a store of value, but it definitely doesn't reach its full potential.
Yeah, I think that's very well said by both of you, and I sort of land in a similar camp of, yeah, it's sort of like the next extension of the thesis, and its full potential is being serving all the needs of a form of money, right, which would include a medium of exchange type use case. And it's also just fascinating because, like you pointed out, the white paper obviously calls it peer-to-peer cash, and then like the first real usage of Bitcoin, whether you're talking about Silk Road or otherwise, like that was medium of exchange. So it's like we've seen this evolution from that to then digital gold, and now it's like, well, into the future it'll probably be some combination of both of those things. And the other thing that comes to mind is we had Bitstein on the show many months ago, and he had an interesting way of thinking about all of this, in the sense that I think a lot of people get stuck in the mode of thinking like, well, it needs to be a store of value first, and then it becomes a medium of exchange. And he had a very interesting insight around that, in the sense that he was like, it's kind of everything all at once. It's just, you're delaying the spend, right? Like if you, as a person who understands the value prop of Bitcoin, you understand that you're in a very small minority that actually understands what it is, then the price is going to go up over time, probably pretty aggressively over the next like decade or two. So you're not incentivized to spend your Bitcoin. And so that's just a reality. But at the same time, money is money for a reason, right? Like you're eventually going to use it for something. And so even if you're delaying that eventual medium of exchange use case, like one, we still need to like plan for it. And two, there are going to be people around the world who have different use cases and different needs at different times. And so, yeah, I think that's well said. I certainly wouldn't say it's failed if we don't succeed, to the full extent on the medium of exchange side. But I think it's just going to be, I think we're early days, and I think it's going to be a process, and different people have different needs at different times for money, generally speaking. But I did want to maybe just taking a step back a bit. Pierre, you've been on the show before. People are somewhat familiar with Flash, a portfolio company of early riders. But maybe each of you could give sort of just a high-level brief background on yourselves, how you got into Bitcoin, and what each of your companies does.
Well, so I can go first. It'll be further. So I'm Pierre Corbin. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Flash. And at Flash, we provide software solutions for businesses that want to be able to monetize in Bitcoin in self-custody, no intermediaries, just unlocking peer-to-peer payments for businesses.
Awesome. Yeah. So my name's Graham. I'm founder and CEO of Voltage. And I got into Bitcoin about 2012. Very fascinated about it from like the tech perspective of, man, how can you create this like globally decentralized like payment network that no one can like, stop payments, and like all of the things that kind of go along inside of Bitcoin from the tech perspective. And then, kept it as a hobby for a long time and worked in software, and then ultimately started Voltage basically to solve my own problem of, as I was building things inside of Bitcoin, it was just really starting from scratch over and over and over again. And everyone was like building everything from scratch, like from for every single project, building Bitcoin Core from source, like all of these different things. It's like, man, there's got to be a better way. And so that's why I created Voltage. And what it ultimately is today is a method of just being able to integrate Bitcoin in the Lightning Network, is what we do the majority of our business on, to make it much easier, faster to integrate the technology into your business. And so instead of hiring out a team of 4 or 5 people, and again starting it all from scratch, you can really just kind of hit our APIs and plug in to be able to process payments, or both Bitcoin and then stablecoins are coming soon, which we'll probably touch on soon, and being able to do that much easier and faster than you would kind of starting it all from zero.
Yeah, no, that's a super helpful overview. Maybe like Graham, on your side, it'd be helpful to walk through maybe like a few examples that are like tangible of like how either projects or different use cases are using Voltage today. We mentioned we alluded to the partnership with BitGo on the stablecoin side, but maybe even before stablecoins, like just on the sort of Bitcoin native side, could you walk through some sort of tangible examples of how Voltage helps companies?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so some examples of customers that we work with are like exchanges. So if an exchange wants to add in Lightning to do deposits and withdrawals inside of their platform, they're able to hook into Voltage really quickly and easily and add in that capability without having to again hire a team and do a lot of the complexity themselves. We also work with like payment processors, so people that are doing. Historically, it's been very much like if anyone is moving any kind of Bitcoin on chain, you can do it faster and cheaper via Lightning. So that's a better user experience, and that's saving potentially millions of dollars a year, depending on your volumes of on chain fees that you can save into moving into Lightning. And so we work with a lot of like crypto or Bitcoin specific payment processors and being able to move, create better cogs as well as faster, better experiences by moving that volume into Lightning. And then we're also working on, some newer use cases of, getting more traditional finance into Bitcoin and being able to have kind of like the dollars to Bitcoin kind of solve for them and all of those different things. So ultimately, we really Lightning is made to be a faster, cheaper way of moving Bitcoin, and that's basically what we enable for people like exchanges, payment processors, neobanks, wallets, any of those kinds of folks.
Gotcha. And maybe we can touch on the partnership with BitGo now, because I found it very interesting, just in the sense that I think to announce and launch something like this, I'll pull up the presser now, but to go about this, I would imagine that there was a significant demand. Like there were people, institutions in particular, asking for this type of thing. And I'm curious, one, is that true? And was that sort of the impetus for doing this, that there was, clear demand from institutional folks that wanted to, move dollars in a more efficient way effectively? And then beyond that, I guess, secondary question, in your mind at this stage, is that where the majority of demand is for using something like Lightning, is moving dollars as opposed to, institutions moving around Bitcoin on Lightning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like with this integration with BitGo, we're doing it. I mean, we're starting off with doing Bitcoin payments over Lightning, and so stablecoins are kind of a coming soon thing. As soon as like Taproot Assets has launched, and we have people like Tether that have publicly announced that they're going to support it in the coming months.
Mm-hmm.
So the stablecoins over Lightning is a coming soon thing, which we do see a huge amount of demand for. With this as well, for specifically on this BitGo integration, yes, I mean there has been a lot of folks that we talk to that are very interested in Lightning. They want to enable it for all of the benefits that I've kind of mentioned before, but they already use people like a BitGo or some kind of like custodian to manage all of their other asset movements, asset management. And so instead of having kind of an additional provider that would be like Voltage if they work directly, we're able to hook into the BitGo network, and their ultimately customers are able to kind of hit a single source that they've already integrated their business and be able to get the benefits of Lightning. So ultimately, it makes it much a better user experience for these companies that are wanting to integrate Lightning, because they still use the same kind of provider, the same interface that they always have been, but can really enable it much quicker and faster than they would have previously. So ultimately, this should, we're anticipating having a big jump in adoption by leveraging the BitGo network, their fairly large set of customers, and being able to bring Lightning into that group. So we are really excited about what this is gonna, how this is gonna catapult adoption over this coming year.
Nice. That's super helpul and really fascinating. I guess before we go into the stablecoin side of this a little bit further, I just reread the Voltage and Fidelity report from earlier this year, and one of the things that really stuck out to me was the average channel capacity really growing significantly, whereas the average number of channels per node has not really grown quite as much. And you mentioned a ton of integration with custodians, neobanks, and we're seeing a ton of demand from peer-to-peer custodians in terms of ways to settle balances that are exchanged between the two custodians. I guess where do you see most of the demand for Lightning, at least in your seat, and based on kind of the public data that you have? Would be interesting just to see if this is kind of matched what you thought Voltage was going to be in the Lightning network exactly when you launched, or where we are today.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like touching on the kind of the way that I was thinking about when I started the company versus today, like touching on that first. I mean, when I definitely started Voltage, it was very much like consumer, like retail focus, like, everyone in the world is going to have a node and everyone is going to need like really easy access and all those things. I think that's definitely shifted as we've seen the Lightning Network mature over the years, where it's definitely less people operating like a node in like the full-fledged node. We've seen a lot of advancements in things like LDK that help make it much more like you can still do self-custodial Lightning without like the full-on node that we think about in like the Start 9s or Umbrels, or like a full node on Voltage. And so we've seen much more of like these kinds of people like us moving much more onto the business end of things, where we work with again like exchanges, payment processors, all those things that I mentioned, and being able to really optimize on creating better experiences for them and then ultimately their users as well. And so in that shift, in that shift of at least us focusing a lot more on the business side of things, we've seen the metrics inside of Lightning kind of shift towards that as well. As we've highlighted, the average channel is getting much, much larger. That's because, businesses are just doing more than, they're trying to facilitate, thousands of payments across their customer base, not just like, hey, a couple payments a day maybe for an individual. So that requires more capacity. And it's just the maturation of the network itself to realize that, okay, it's better to have like 5 really large channels than have like 100 small channels, for both from a management perspective, from like the effectiveness of payments going through, the likelihood of success, all of those things. And so this data, as we've kind of highlighted in the report, really show that this is maturity in the network as we've learned what is working and not working. And so that's kind of like it's the public data is kind of validating what we're seeing on the business side.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I think, just thinking about the past few years, in terms of the Lightning Network, its adoption, its growth, its development, I think, generally speaking, people are just way too impatient. Like, I think there's, been a lot of rhetoric and talk on Bitcoin Twitter, et cetera, in terms of just the frictions of Lightning, which do exist, and the ways in which it needs to improve. I'm curious from both of you, how would you sort of handicap the past, call it 12 to 24 months of Lightning development, and how it's gotten better, more efficient, more usable with, and maybe that's even related to like folks like Lightspark and David Marcus entering the fray. How does that sort of relate to, again, just this ongoing development that's just going to take time? And again, I think people are just very impatient and wanting things to just work seamlessly and perfectly overnight, and that's just not the reality of building on an open protocol. But curious, either of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think, and the thing is, it's a kind of general question. We could go all over the place. But yeah, I'll start somewhere and we'll see where it can go. So generally speaking, when it comes to already building, beyond just user experience, but already the building experience, the developer experience, it's pretty tricky to build on Lightning. And it's kind of like what Graham said earlier. You want to start a Bitcoin business, you have to like start from scratch. You have to, you have a use case. Well, you first have to like build a wallet essentially, which is complicated. That's what we stumbled upon at Flash. That's thought, well, this is where there's a big difference is with Nostr Wallet Connect, and the fact that you can just connect to a shared library of APIs, and any wallet can become compatible, and all of a sudden your application can work for all of these wallets. That's how we developed Flash in the first place. We then, of course, created our own wallet in order to be able to just scale this, right? But even when it comes to building the wallet itself, how do you make Bitcoin easy over the Lightning Network is not a simple answer, because if you want to start a Lightning wallet in self-custody, well, then you need to download the wallet, And then you need to fund the wallet because you need to open channels. You need to add liquidity to this channel. And so it's kind of, if you're a first-time user that is just curious and just wants to try this out and start, in our case, accepting Bitcoin payments, well, then to do this in full self-custody, which is, of course, what we recommend, right? To get started, well, then in that case, you need to pretty much do 4 payments before you can actually get there, because you need to buy Bitcoin or to be able to do this stuff. So for a new person, it's impossible. Now there are other tools out there that exist, but it's not exactly Lightning in that case. But allows to do things much more just faster while being compatible with Lightning Network, which is how we built our wallet, which is using the Liquid network, right? So the funds are in Liquid, and you can do automatic swaps that just allow to do a bunch of things, right? And so, of course, it is self-custodial because you own your keys, but you do rely on the Liquid network, which is less sovereign, perhaps, compared to Bitcoin or even the Lightning network in self-custody. So it's a matter of trade-offs, right? But then we managed to make a user experience at Flash that if you're a business that is just curious about accepting Bitcoin payments, well, then you can get set up in literally just a couple minutes because you download the wallet. It's got a balance of 0, and you don't need any balance to start accepting Bitcoin payments, essentially. So it's automatically connected to Flash, and you can accept these payments. So it's very easy, and it simplifies such things, right?
Yep.
Where the Lightning network makes this more complicated. And then there's different use cases that the Lightning network makes also a bit more complicated, like offline payments and stuff like that. That we managed to solve with Liquid, but we'll get into that later. But also one of the great things with the Lightning network that other networks don't have, including the Liquid network, is micropayments that are instant. Currently, with the Flash wallets, there's a limit, minimum amount of 1,000 satoshis, because that's the requirement that both swaps have, 1,000 satoshi transaction. Now, word on the street is that they're going to lower it to the minimum amount that they have for the amount of fees that they want, which would be about, I think, 43 satoshis. So, we're already getting into the micro transaction territory, but still not quite. The price of Bitcoin going up, I think, this number will have to be revised. And so, so that's just some general thoughts.
Yeah, and Graham, on your side, I'm curious as well. Just, I think that was, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the impetus of you and Fidelity putting out that report was just to say, hey, here's the state of things, here's how things are progressing, here's how development is moving forward. So curious your thoughts on where are we today relative to a year or 2 years ago, and how do you see this playing out?
Yeah, definitely. That was one of the reasons why we put out the report. It's one of the really challenging parts about Lightning is that it's inherently a very private network, and given it's peer-to-peer, you don't have the same metrics that you do with other chains, Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana. When you name the chain, almost any kind of public blockchain, you can see exactly how much is being transacted, how frequently, the fee rates, all those things. With Lightning, it's all private because it's peer-to-peer. So it's easy. That's one of the reasons why you see so much FUD and on Twitter and things like that for Lightning is there's no public data that you can point to. So that's kind of one of the reasons why we want to do a report with Fidelity, is to highlight, okay, here's really what's happening behind the scenes that you can only really get by being in the mix and being able to facilitate transactions and those kinds of things. And so that was one of the reasons. Almost everyone that is kind of throwing shade at Lightning usually has some kind of motive of their own. It's they're trying to push side chains or their other layer 2 or something else that is kind of competing. And so it's something that should basically just be ignored from those kinds of folks. And then there's also inside of crypto in general, there's always the desire to have these solutions very, very quickly. Well, to your point, building an open protocol and doing it in a correct way where people actually get self-custody the entire time is a very challenging thing. And that's a very hard thing to do. Other chains are able to move faster because they're sacrificing on a lot of those things. And so, sure, if Lightning wanted to sacrifice on all of the properties that that Bitcoin started with, yeah, we could move a lot faster. We could make things a lot easier in a UX or whatever. But we would be sacrificing on the whole reason why Bitcoin was created in the first place. And obviously, the community doesn't want to do that. And so, we're very intentional with the way that the Lightning has been built out. But then going into more of from what we see it like, from a couple of years ago today to today, vastly different in terms of like what it takes to like get started and get, ramped up in Lightning. Our product has come a very long way in that time. And we also have a new product that we're releasing in next week that should do a lot in terms of boosting that even to another level. And so ultimately the experience has been, it has definitely started challenging, and it's been gradually being reduced over time, to the point where it's really as simple as any other payment scheme or blockchain or whatever you want to equate it to, via people like a Voltage or a Flash or something. If you're going to try and start and like do it all yourself, like again from scratch, then like there's definitely still some edge cases there. There's still some things that some gotchas that you can run into. But if you're working with a provider that has basically run into every single one of those gotchas and figured out a way to solve for it, it makes the experience far, far better. So we've come a huge way in the last couple of years of making it accessible, and not only accessible, but being able to process payments faster and cheaper than any other blockchain out in the crypto ecosystem. And that was something else that we highlighted in the Fidelity report is, comparing it to the global like crypto networks, there's nothing that can beat it in terms of speed and reliability and cost than what you can do on Lightning. So that was another thing that we wanted to highlight and show that, it's not only working, but it's working really, really well.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed out a few really important points there. One just being the distinct difference in architectures of the broader crypto space and people building on Bitcoin. I think there's obviously trade-offs associated, but to your point, like they are sacrificing on certain things in order to move fast and not really care about some of these fundamental things that are important to Bitcoin. The other component there, I think, is I'm curious your views on, well, if I'm being generous about it, I think like the broader crypto space has found some product market fit in stablecoins generally. So if you just look at stablecoin volumes, vast majority of them are not on Bitcoin, right? But as you're alluding to, they should be on Bitcoin because it's cheaper, faster than these blockchains. But I guess why the disconnect up until now? Is it just because the development on Bitcoin tends to move slower, almost purposefully so, than these other blockchains, and that's why they've gotten sort of the initial adoption of stablecoins? And do you think sort of medium to long term that percentage split shifts over time? So where more stablecoin volumes are happening on Lightning or other Bitcoin adjacent protocols?
Yeah, I mean, I think like yes, I think that the percentages shift over time. I think why why it's taken a little bit longer on Bitcoin is, one, I mean, the protocol for actually being able to like issue a stablecoin on Lightning didn't exist until the recent, like, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago or something.
Yep.
And then even then, it takes a while to build it out and have it like very, very reliable. You compare it to people like the Solana Foundation or something that raises like hundreds of millions of dollars to go and like just throw at the problem. We don't really have that inside of Bitcoin. Like Lightning Labs is kind of the lead developer on like the Taproot Assets protocol, which enables stablecoins to be issued on Lightning, but they still have like no near the funding of like the Solana Foundation or anything like that. And so it's kind of like the other folks solve it by just throwing a bunch of money at the problem, which like is Bitcoin and Lightning is just so grassroots that we don't have that same ability. And I think that leads us to build it in a much better way ultimately. But I do think that we're kind of at the point where that is like now possible, and we're seeing people like Tether publicly announce that they are going to be issuing on top of Lightning. And so I think that once you combine that, there's no denying that stablecoins generally have product market fit inside of the crypto ecosystem. It's what the majority of crypto in general is used for, is stablecoin movement. And so when you couple that, a strong use case with Bitcoin and Lightning being the best way of moving value, I think that's a big recipe for success, and that's going to over time really take a lot of market share from these other chains. Especially like Tron was one of the most popular ways of moving Tether. It still probably is, but their fee rates are gradually going up. And so I think that as like these ones that really started in a value prop of moving it fast and cheap are starting to lose that value. And so it's only natural that it starts to move into the better way of transacting, which is Lightning. And so we're very excited for the stablecoin movement to come to Lightning. We think it'll have a really big impact.
Yeah, two things that I wanted to hit on there. One that really gets underlooked is Bitcoin being and Lightning Network being able to be the fastest, cheapest way in order to transact across all of crypto, but also having the value accrual narrative behind it of it being a store of value. Because if there is no reason to have a store of value, then paying out of that, it's essentially you need it as a savings technology in order to also use it and want to keep it in as a payments technology, right? Like, I'm sure everybody's seen Jesse Myers' chart previously of like where all the assets sit, and it's 110 or 130 trillion dollars with money, and then there's about a $500 trillion use case for storing value over time. And so with Bitcoin, it's kind of just both of it actually can both compete with the money aspect as well as actually saving value. And so, just kind of to solidify it, it doesn't make sense to, really focus on having the best payments technology if there isn't any actual real way to store value in the asset. And then additionally, was curious how you see demand for the stable coins kind of rolling out here in the future. Are you going to be kind of going after the same market as the tethers of the world? Is it going to be a little bit different in terms of, where Voltage kind of plays in its collaboration with BitGo? I was just kind of curious about, how you see that playing out.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think for us, it's definitely some overlap in the existing, stablecoin world, just because of, it's a lot of these. I think that over time, like as you look at the inefficiencies that people are seeing inside of these chains for moving stable coins, for us to come in and say, hey, you can do the same thing on Lightning and you can save, again, a couple $1 million a year on your transaction fees, like that's kind of a no-brainer. So I think that there's a lot of overlap naturally, just because it's still stablecoin movement. It's just kind of a different chain, so to speak. But it's one that actually, it's not just another chain for the sake of more users or anything like that. It's just a far faster, cheaper, better way of moving value. And so I think that there is a lot of overlap that we'll see between the two.
Yeah, and I think also it might. I mean, I'm curious to see how long it'll take to transition, because of course USDT on Tron, on Solana, whatever, isn't compatible with USDT on Lightning directly, right? Or on Liquid or whatever. They're on their different chains, so you need to have like some kind of swap solutions there, or through exchanges and all that. So I mean, I wonder how quickly some of the stablecoins that are exchanged on these their blockchains are going to start being transitioning to Bitcoin, to Lightning, I guess, is the better way to say, because it's not actually Bitcoin, right? It's just the Lightning network itself that is making the payments. So it's the payment network of it that is strong. It's just we're using the best payment network for Bitcoin and found a way to actually reuse it for stablecoins as well, which I think is pretty cool. It's just about the efficiency of the payment network itself. And so I think this transition might take a bit of time, and I look forward to the day where it won't be messy when you're trying to send USDT to someone where, it's just, okay, so where do you want this USDT? What chain? None of them are compatible. And the rise of other, I think atomic swap services would also be very, very useful for such things, as opposed to relying on custodian startups to just, do this swap and hold custody of funds momentarily, like the market is today.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe it's worth taking a bit of a step back and just thinking about sort of, the interoperability of open protocols. I think is something that's really fascinating to me, and particularly Pierre, on your side, what you guys have done leveraging Nostr Wallet Connect. If you could talk a little bit about that and sort of just what that has unlocked for you in terms of making Bitcoin payments better and more efficient by combining various open protocols. Because I think that's, it's sort of this other side of the spectrum when you think about the super centralized Solana Foundation building XYZ thing. It's like, well, no, we're going to take this different approach. One, it's going to be slower, a little bit, more purposeful in terms of how slow it moves, but also like, it's not just going to be this centralized monolithic thing. There's going to be various open protocols that work together to enable all different types of things. So I would love to hear a little bit about what you guys are doing at Flash, and then if that that resonates with anything you guys are working on at Voltage, Graham, that'd be interesting as well.
Yeah, so essentially we're using, of course, multiple technologies, but I think in that sense, the one that is the most important one, and really the one that we started with, because before reaching Flash, we built a bunch of things with my co-founder, and just trying to figure out what's the best way to build things. How do we avoid holding custody of user funds? Because the point is to avoid regulation as much as possible, and solve problems in a bit of a different way. And essentially, in doing all of this, we found Nostr Wallet Connect, and we realized that it's the best way for us to build in an interoperable environment without having to build a wallet of our own. And the reason for it is because essentially you can, using Nostr Wallet Connect, you can connect your wallet to Flash, and then Flash can just use this wallet. So we can trigger payments, we can also make payment requests, and what's very interesting in all of that is that when I say we can trigger payments, Flash isn't really doing anything. We're just sending a message to your wallet, and your wallet will receive this message and can then make the payment. But the wallet can still block that payment, right? Like everything is under the user's control. And if I think today of the best wallets that work with Flash, we've got so AbiHub, which is self-custodial, but you have to pay for it unless you go for the more technical route. But I'm thinking like very simple users. So self-custodial, but you have to pay for it. There's a CoinOS that is free but custodial. And then there's Flash that is self-custodial and free, right? So the point that I'm trying to make here is that there's different wallets with different features, whether it's custodial and self-custodial, that can help users manage their funds in whatever way they prefer. But these same users can connect their wallet to Flash, and for them, we solve the peer-to-peer payment side of things. So we're solving the payment problem, right? We're not solving the custody problem, at all. That's an entirely different topic. But the point is more that Flash can interact with wallets and automate certain actions on these wallets using this technology. And any wallet that adds Nostr Wallet Connect support to it, all of their users are automatically compatible with Flash. But of course, it's not only Flash, it's with the whole ecosystem of Nostr Wallet Connect that is growing. And every new wallet that you see coming out, like in the past few months, most of them have support for Nostr Wallet Connect because of the use cases that it allows users to build. And I can give you, I think, one of these example use cases that I think is pretty mind-blowing is how we manage our fees at Flash. So the way Flash works is that it's free to get started, free to use. You can create a store, you can create a point of sale, whatever you want inside of Flash for free. And then the moment you receive a payment as a merchant, well, then, of course, this happens through our software, so we know when because the wallet can confirm to us when he's received the payment. And so then we can trigger a payment from the merchant's wallet to ours. So it'll be like, a micro transaction, 1.5% fee that we take. And we know what wallet is connected to Flash, and we have access to methods that allow us to get the information about that wallet. And as part of this response, we can see what network the wallet has access to. So by default, Nostr Wallet Connect was created only for Lightning, and a lot of use cases were built with that. When we created the Flash wallet, as I said earlier, we wanted to go the easier route, easier UX to get started, but also easier for us to build. So we went through the Breeze Nodeless SDK, which uses the Liquid network, which means that essentially for it to be compatible properly with Flash, we added Liquid to Nostr Wallet Connect. And I know that now on-chain is being added to Nostr Wallet Connect, right? And so essentially what we can do is the moment we have to pay the fee to the Flash wallet from the merchant's wallet, we can see what networks this user has available. And as I mentioned earlier, the Liquid network, in order to do swaps with Lightning, there's a limit of 1,000 Satoshis. So instead of doing a swap, if the user has a Liquid wallet, well, then we're going to pay ourselves in Liquids. But if he does have Lightning, well, then we're going to do the payments as well in Lightning to our Lightning wallet. And so in this completely interoperable way where we know nothing about the user because we don't need to do any kind of KYC or anything. So we don't know the user. The only thing we have is a connection string from his wallet. With this, we can know exactly what networks he has, and we can generate backend payments choosing the network that works the best between the payer and the merchant, right? So this is how it works with our subscriptions as well, where I gave the example of the fees, but subscriptions is the same thing. We know the payer wallet, what networks he has. We know the merchant wallet, what network he has. If they both have Liquid right now, it means they both have a Flash wallet. We should make them use Liquid instead of use Lightning, because they're going to be able to do smaller transactions and smaller fees, because liquid to liquid is cheaper than having to do the swaps with Bolts and Breeze. They take their own commission. So we can choose the network based on that, and I think that's like one of the true powerful things that exists in Nostr Wallet Connect, that that just keep discovering with time.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think a goal for all of this is like to make it so the end users, whether it's the payer or the merchant, isn't privy to like everything you just described in terms of what's going on behind the scenes, which networks each party A or B is operating on, and it can just be as easy as possible for them to click a couple buttons and send or receive their payment. Like that's where we need to get to, and I think like what you guys are building is really accelerating that progression to get there.
Yeah, so I think just to follow up on that, that's 100% how we're thinking about this long term. Imagine just a network of payments. Imagine PayPal, where you can connect your bank account or something, right, and hold these funds in PayPal, and you can send them between these users. PayPal holds custody of these funds, and of course, the payments that happen in PayPal happen in the PayPal network, right? But the way we're thinking about this is being able to be pay ourselves or the network itself. That's what Nostr Wallet Connect is. It's not necessarily what Flash is meant to be. But it's a network where people can just hold their funds in whatever it is. As soon as we have stablecoin support, we will add stablecoins to Nostr Wallet Connect. Right? So whatever kind of funds are as part of Nostr Wallet Connect and the user's wallet, well, one user should be able to send money to another user, not having to wonder what network it is, right? As long as they have one network that matches, whether it's Lightning, Liquid, on-chain, stablecoin, whichever one it is that they have in common, this is how the payment should go, right? And the users wouldn't even need to choose, which I think is pretty exciting. And all in, from Flash's perspective, non-custody, I guess, right? Because the wallets might be self-custodial or custodial. From Flash's perspective, it doesn't matter, right? Because we're anyway facilitating peer-to-peer payments in this.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, I think that Nostr Wallet Connect is very interesting for the fact of trying to obfuscate as much of the complexity of the experience that we can. I think that that's something that is going to be very important as we look at more of the kind of merchant level, point of sale type experiences. Cause I think that's something we remember Strike announcing integration with NCR and all of those things, which ended up kind of not panning out. But I think that was, I don't know all the details of that specifically, but I think that was one of the challenges of the experience was the complexity that exists inside of actually paying at that time with Bitcoin and kind of a point of sale method. I think if there's a lot more that has been solved today versus then, and then also more that can be solved to really just make it a very, very seamless experience. And just that's one thing that I will admit is one of the great things about credit cards is it's a pretty easy experience to pay. I can even just tap my phone and it just works. And so we need that's our competition. That's what we need to be striving for. And so that's what we need to be building towards. And I think that Nostr Wallet Connect is one of those things that kind of is helping us get there.
100% agreed. And one of the things that you mentioned, Pierre, I think you listed off 5 or 6 interoperable open networks during that, including Nostr Wallet Connect, Liquid, Lightning, Bitcoin on chain, and then being able to use both swaps and Breeze's SDK. It's just really amazing the progress that's kind of happening behind the scenes at the moment, and I guess in person too, but at least you're obfuscating that for the consumer, so it's just the easiest process it can be.
One thing you guys didn't mention, and I'm just curious to get your thoughts on, is the world of eCash. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the development there? I know there's a few different efforts, whether it's Fedi or Cashew, that are sort of pushing that forward. But where do you see that sort of fitting into the landscape of Bitcoin payments, generally speaking? Is it just another sort of cog in this overall system? And because the other sort of component of all of this is like, I don't necessarily view Lightning as like winner take all. Like I think over the medium to long term, there's going to be many different layers on top of Bitcoin. And so, maybe you have, various different sort of things that are progressing simultaneously and sort of interop as well. But curious if you guys have any thoughts on eCash in particular.
Go ahead, Pierre.
Yeah, sure. So I have some. I think, and I'm trying to dig a bit deeper because the eCash community, they are embracing Nostr Wallet Connect. So, that's why I'm, of course, trying to follow this as much as possible and on the Telegram groups and so on. I think the developer community there and how it's growing is super impressive. And I think that some of the use cases that they've unlocked are, very, just really, really good to see. I remember the one thing that made me, I think, start to kind of look a bit more, discover eCash a bit more, was when Dr. Calais on Twitter shared a video of him making an eCash transaction on an airplane without internet access, which, because that's, I think, that's one big difficulty I think that exists in Lightning, in self-custodial Lightning, which is that the Lightning node needs to be online, but it also needs to be reachable. Right? So, if you think of mobile Lightning wallets, well, the node is in the cloud, but you access the node from the device. And that's kind of how we were working with Flash originally. And that's how we work, in fact, just with Nostr Wallet Connect typically. But we've added extra features through the Flash wallet that allows us to create offline create Lightning invoices while the phone is offline, and that's because we can leverage the Liquid network for that. And so, we can know if a wallet is offline, we can't wake it up with a notification. Well, then we're going to use the Liquid address that we saved, and we're going to do a swap directly this way. And I think that's one of the things and it would be very interesting to see how eCash can kind of scale this, make this more usable, and how we could also try and implement something like that so that merchants would be able to accept offline payments completely. I don't know, big question mark at this stage, to be honest, how we could potentially integrate it. But I think it's pretty good. I do also have some not necessarily doubts, but it is a mint that needs to be created. There is a certain gray area when it comes to the custody of it, just like there is with the Liquid network. I'm not saying right.
Yep.
But I think that's just when it comes to regulation. That's where I try and keep an eye out, because it's from the perspective of Flash. Again, we want to be always non-custodial, so we got to be able to figure out what technology do we exactly provide to our users to avoid the situation where 6 months down the road, all of a sudden we get a warning and we have to start KYCing all of our users, right? Because we're fixing the payment side of things. Yeah, it's just peer-to-peer payments. There's no need for KYC, knowing who our users are. None of that. So that's really, if you manage to solve this properly, well, we will never need to KYC our users for this, and that's what we'd want to keep as just a direction for Flash. So that's where I still don't exactly grasp what would be implications when it comes to regulations there. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think that's super fair, Graham.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think that it'll be interesting to see how it kind of continues to play out. I think that it makes sense as just like I agree with Pierre's kind of evaluation of it's similar to a Liquid or any of these other side chains. And so I think that they all have unique trade-offs for what they you kind of have some things you give up while you're using it, but then you also gain some other things. And so it'll just be, I think, interesting just to see where the adoption lands. I do think that Lightning is obviously still the most prominent L2 or like what? It's not a side chain, but it's the most prominent off-chain scaling mechanism that has existed inside of Bitcoin, and that's still like from like you think about the exchanges that have adopted Lightning over the last year. There's been a lot. There's been far less adopting Liquid or eCash or Fedimint or whatever it is, and so I think it's still, that's why we focus so hard on Lightning, is because we still see it as not only what's in demand today, but also where it will be the ultimate biggest value accrual inside of Bitcoin scaling in the long term. But it will be interesting to see how some of these newer protocols and methods like this play out, and see where the adoption ultimately lands.
Absolutely. Maybe we could turn to what both of you are excited for the rest of the year here. Maybe talk a little bit about the roadmap at each of your companies. What's what your heads down focused on right now in terms of building out and offering to your customers.
Go for it, Graham. I think you've got a lot.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we got quite a few things in the works. We'll have a new product out, in the next week or two that we're really excited about, that I think is probably just best to read all the announcements when that happens. But really just simplifying the experience of integrating and using Lightning, and just continuing to push the envelope and how simple we can make it and how quick and easy it can be. So we're doing a lot with that, but then also the big thing that I'm excited for in this year is the stablecoins on Lightning. So, we've talked about it for a while, and now that it seems like it's, possible, it's here, people are doing it. And so it's really still yet to be seen what impact does that have on the network and adoption and all of those things. So I think that it'll be a pretty big deal, both from the efficiencies that the companies gain from doing stablecoins on Lightning, like we talked about, but also the boost in the network itself of more liquidity in the network or whatever it is. And so I think that it'll help both the users of stablecoins, but then also just the general Bitcoin Lightning network in itself. So we're really excited. We're working on the products in that realm too. So we're excited to see that be finally possible, and then working with customers to enable that inside of their applications. So we think that'll be a big opportunity this year.
Awesome.
Yeah, but so on Flash's side, we're about to release the new version of our web application that has much nicer user interface, but also just user experience. We gathered a lot of feedback from the users in the past 6 months, and so we're hoping this version will be one that puts all of this feedback together. After watching how users use Flash, the first things they do when they get on the application, what kind of issues they see. The Bitcoiner crowd, they can be a bit difficult when it comes to some things like in our onboarding currently, when you create the account, you have to provide you can provide some information. If as a business, you want to be able to receive invoices in order to justify, the expenses that you had, which are the Flash fees that we take. It's completely optional. You can click on the little skip button, but the skip button is too small, and Bitcoiners consider this KYC process, even though it could be like fake information. So that's the kind of stuff that's. But the answer here, and I think it's true for every product that you build, is how quickly can you get the user to actually using your platform and actually having something that allows him to. And so that's what we were trying to work on this new version. So we're also going to be releasing our wallet that is currently on test flight. We're going to be releasing it in app stores, and with packed of functionalities, including subscription management directly. So you'll be able to manage all of your Flash subscriptions from the wallet. But also we'll be adding the possibility of having these offline payments, as I mentioned. And it'll be offline payments in any kind of network. What we want to do is every single one of our checkouts by default will show the Lightning network and show a Lightning invoice. But you can pay other ways. You can pay in Liquid. You can pay on-chain, USDT. So, kind of pack all of these payment solutions using Lightning as the default, but, giving more options when paying, which of course will make it easier for merchants that want to get into Bitcoin. Because we get this a lot. First of all, most people, they don't understand, Bitcoin versus crypto. And so oftentimes it's, you only have Bitcoin. Oh, okay. And I understand them, right? So then, of course, the majority of, anyway, the conversations I have like this are about education and explaining kind of why we make this difference. But also being able to add USDT and just stablecoins in general is the kind of thing that will make this, it'll make it easier to answer when someone has these kind of remarks. But then, the next thing that we want to be able to do is, of course, scale all of this, make sure everything works nicely, but then adding pure self-custodial Lightning is kind of, a priority for us here. Because, first of all, I think self-custodial Lightning is kind of the way to go. And it's become so much easier than what it used to be. So I think there's just, depending on some use cases, of course, we're looking at Voltage a lot. We've, of course, had many conversations with Graham as well and his team, simply because of the quality of their product, of course, the reputation that it has, and just how easy it is to get started on that, right? So, because one thing we need to be able to do is, building the Flash wallet is one thing, and it's great because we can unlock use cases and we can show them. But in the end, our business model comes from our business tools. Therefore, we need to be able to make sure that we bring more people over. So other wallets that already have a user base, help them get onto Nostr Wallet Connect. And so we're going to be open sourcing a bunch of our work as well to make it easier for them to be able to reach out and say, look, here it is. It's the exact same technology you're using, the exact same wallet, all of this, to just be able to simplify that and grow this network, because we will grow with it.
Brilliant.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Very exciting, boys. Maybe before we wrap here, I started the convo by mentioning a report that Liam had written called "Bitcoin is the True FinTech," and I think we've enumerated a lot of reasons why that is. And part of that report and part of what Liam put out there was like, if you think about quote unquote FinTech, what that really has looked like over the past couple decades, it's really like lipstick on a pig of the traditional finance system, all these slow, old, archaic rails, the Swift system, what have you. And it's not something fundamentally different and new and better and more efficient. Whereas if you look at everything that you can enable via Bitcoin and all these interoperable protocols that work together, like that is really financial technology, i.e. FinTech, more so than just mapping sort of like Venmo on top of these old slow rails where like the payment isn't actually settling, i.e. name of the show, final settlement. Like these are better native sort of infrastructure for everything you could possibly do in finance. So Liam, I don't know if you had anything else to share on that or just generally on what we've talked about today.
Just would recommend anybody check out the piece if they haven't already. I mean, we touched on most of it, but there are three main pillars of why Bitcoin is the real FinTech, I would say, which is, it's elite savings technology, just being completely finite. It is, the custodial properties that are built into it, whether it's self-custody, multi-sig, or collaborative custody. It just allows for better escrow payments, holding Bitcoin in more self-sovereign ways and ways where there's reduced custodial risk. And then the last one is primarily talking about how its interoperable nature is just allows it to be the best FinTech ever. Allowing for everything like consumer rewards, payroll, payments, different escrow natures is just significantly better than the existing systems. So I think just based on the conversation today, you guys are really pushing the ball forward on really bringing this, especially on the payment side, just to the broader audience. But it would I would just recommend everybody check out the report if they haven't already.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. We'll also put Voltage and Fidelity's recent report in the show notes as well. And Pierre and Graham, where can folks learn more about Flash and Voltage and yourselves as well?
Yep, so you can just go on paywithflash.com. That's our website directly that we redid recently, actually, just last week. So go check it out. We also have, of course, on X, you can find me, Pierre Corbin. Just search for me, you'll find me, and you can find all the information about about Flash Directly and all the other stuff that I do. If I can plug, actually, if ever there's anyone in Europe next month, May 23rd to 25th, there's the Bitcoin Film Fest happening in Warsaw. I'm the co-founder of that. I'm not so much involved in the organization of it anymore because I just don't have much time. But it is happening. It's going to be a blast. So it's just a small plug. So you can also find that on my X profile.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Yeah, you can find Voltage at our website's voltage.cloud. Hit us up, send us an email. My email is graham@voltage.cloud. You can also find me on like Twitter at GKRIZEK. Definitely hit us up if you're interested in Lightning payments.
Beautiful. Well, really appreciate the time, fellas. This was a great convo, and look forward to speaking again soon.
Thanks a lot.
Later, boys. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the show. If you found the information valuable, please share the episode with a friend or leave a rating on your favorite podcast app. All the links we discussed in today's show will be in the show notes inside your podcast app. Before we finish, a quick reminder that Onramp Media is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing should be construed as investment or legal advice. Regardless of where you are on your Bitcoin journey, we'd love to hear from you. Visit onrampbitcoin.com/contact to schedule a consultation with one of our private client advisors.